WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore positive March Madness, and the Lamar-a-thon continues around here. We're going to be doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour with our friends at the Maryland Lottery, celebrating 50 years. We're going to be down at Costas, doing it on the 5th of April, kicking off baseball. Opening day is the next day. Then the 7th, we have Springsteen opening the new arena here in Baltimore, as well as the Eagles in town that weekend. We'll be at Fadley's on the 7th in the morning, welcoming a little bit of a renaissance to downtown Baltimore. I don't know whether Lamar Jackson will be a Raven on April 5th, 6th, and 7th, or whether he'll be a Colt, or I don't know where he'll be. But I do have friends in Indianapolis. A lot of people in Baltimore don't admit that. But Bob Kravitz has been covering not just the National Football League and the Baltimore. I said Baltimore Colts. Wow. Indianapolis Colts. That came out wrong, didn't it? Since they were the Baltimore Colts. He's been there a long, long time through all the Irsay machinations and all the Manning machinations, the Andrew Luck and Captain Luck and all of that. I don't know if there's going to be a Lamar era in Indianapolis, but I do reach to you, Bob, to say you do have an interesting owner out there in Jimmy Irsay that could make this interesting. And I think the Dan Snyder thing in D.C. and the owners' meetings. But I just wanted to reach to you and say, what are you smelling out there in Indianapolis where they're having a hard time replacing Peyton Manning, aren't they?
Yeah, so it's been 7 quarterbacks in 7 years, or this year will be their 7th straight year with a different quarterback. I forget, but it's been a whole lot. And, to me, going after Lamar Jackson makes all the sense in the world. If you got the money, and I think Jim Irsay does, he's not passing the hat anywhere here in Indianapolis. I think you do it. I mean, you've got a guy who's a former MVP, who will, you would think would do great things with Shane Steichen, the new coach here, who basically was there for the renaissance of Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia, has done great things with very different styles of quarterbacking. And, people are like, oh, give up 2 first-rounders. You gave up a first and a third rounder for Carson freaking Wentz. If you give me a guy who's going to make Indianapolis relevant the minute he steps on the field, by God, you got to take a long, hard look at that possibility.
You said Carson freaking Wentz. I guess maybe was it that the day it happened? But I mean, for all of the Andrew Luck thing and for what happened in the bad year and they get the pick, things look perfect in the way that it looked perfect here, right? Flacco out. We got our quarterback. We drafted him 30, you get an extra year because we picked him first year. He wins an MVP. It felt very seamless here. And then you hit that point where you don't have a quarterback and things aren't seamless. And I think the case in point would be is if you take our quarterback and we ain't got one no more, 7 in 7 years, we remember that here. And it happens very quickly. You went from, Peyton, we're guaranteed 12 wins a year every year as long as he's upright, to how are we going to make the playoffs and how are we going to compete with Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, whoever the next guy is? You got to find your next guy.
Well, that's the other thing is look at the AFC. Look at all the elite quarterbacks in the AFC. You can try to make a go of it with Will Levis or Anthony Richardson or whoever the Colts may end up with in the draft, but you're looking at a couple of years unless the guy is a stone cold stud from the word go. And I don't think anybody in that top group of quarterbacks really has that. I think Bryce Young could be really good fast, but he ain't going to be there when the Colts select unless they make a move here in the next couple of weeks, which I don't think they will. I've gotten real mixed feedback on whether the Colts will go after Lamar Jackson. I can only say that from my standpoint, it may be a selfish standpoint because he means lots of readership, lots of eyeballs. But I think for the Colts, this is a chance you've got to take. And it's not really a chance. The guy won the MVP not so long ago. I realize he's missed a couple of games the last 2 years. There are some questions about this, that, and the other thing. But, if you want to compete with the Burrows and the Mahomes and people like that, and you want to be relevant again in this town, you got to go out and you got to get Lamar Jackson.
Would it matter that they put the legwork into guaranteeing him $200 million only to have the Ravens say, nah, we'll take him? And I think the inside word is if 200 million came down the line, the Ravens would say he's yours. We'll take the draft picks because that's what they've signed up for. I don't
Right.
think the Ravens want him anymore, Bob. You know,
I
I
get that
cover the team here
too.
professionally. I don't get the vibe. It's never felt to me like they're in love with the kid anymore, and it's never really felt like he's in love with being here anymore. And case in point would be he didn't even swing a towel in Cincinnati at a playoff game. I mean,
Right.
this is a bruised relationship here, and the notion that they can make it work, and certainly making it work for 32 million a year, I don't think that's going to work. But whether you're going to get a happy, does Lamar really want to be in Miami, or does he really want to be in Indianapolis or in Baltimore, a place like that? And I think that deep down, that's something only he knows. But I would be very concerned about whether he'd want to be a Colt or whether he'd really want to be on your football team, because I think he's very specific about what, in his mind, clearly, no agent, all of this. He's very specific in what he wants.
Right. Well, I mean, I keep hearing people say, well, it's too much money. And I'm like, can you spend too much money on an elite quarterback in this league? Because the Colts have tried for 7 years now to kind of patch over their quarterback issues, and it hasn't worked. If I know that a guy like Lamar Jackson could come in tomorrow and work with Shane Steichen and his new staff, and they do have some talent. I mean, they still have a great running back in Taylor. You still have DeForest Buckner. You still have Shaq Leonard. There's still a lot of guys here who are in their prime or entering their prime. And I'm not sure that you want to play the waiting game and go 3 more years, give or take, before you've got a quarterback who could win in an AFC that's loaded.
Bob Kravitz has covered Indianapolis sports better than anybody for a long, long time, and insights. And so I come to you, and I don't know if we've talked in the last year. I did Jim Irsay's New York event with his collection. It's an amazing collection of things. I spent the evening up there. I was going up to New York to see Robert Plant at Forest Hills, and I went in a day early, and it was one of my favorite events of last year. Like the Mellencamp Band, Natalie Merchant played that night. Mike Mills, who's one of my all-time, they're doing REM songs. And I didn't talk to Jim that night. I said hello to him briefly. Goodell was there. It was in New York. It was a big thing. And cocktails were involved. It was a fun night. It wasn't
Yeah.
about, hey, Jim, how are you or whatever. But Jim's always been magnanimous with me. You and I have talked about this. But he's your beat. You're on it. My people here in Baltimore, Irsay's a 4-letter word here. Always will be.
Right.
For you, where's Jim Irsay's head? Winning, spending money. Why would he want Lamar? Why would he want the bright, shiny object? What's been going on in his life through these 7 quarterbacks in 7 years?
Well, I mean, clearly he's reached this level of advanced frustration. But he did stay with Chris Ballard for a 7th year, which was a little surprising. At the same time, he did give him a contract extension through 26, I believe. So he didn't want to pay 2 guys to do nothing because he gave the extension to Reich as well. Look, Jim likes to make splashes. We all know that. And it would surprise me. Ballard, I think, is more on the draft your own, play conservative kind of approach. But I think Jim Irsay would be interested in a move like that. He enjoys being in the limelight. He had a weird year now. I mean, look, he's physically and mentally as okay as I have ever seen him. But he did some really weird crap this year. I mean, mandating that they bench Matt Ryan for Ellinger, firing Frank Reich. I mean, he did a lot of weird stuff where he insinuated himself into the day-to-day goings on. He was very much like his late father.
And Dad did that. I was getting ready to say it sounds familiar.
And that's not the way that Jim normally operates. Jim is hands-on without being meddling. I mean, he's got a football background. He's not one of those owners who has 55 different companies and this is just a tax write-off. This is Jim Irsay's life. But I think he went overboard this past year and really turned the Colts into something of a laughingstock. And they paid for it, man. 4-13-1, 4-12-1. So I think he wants to make it right, and I think Lamar Jackson's a good first step.
Well, the question in a place like that would be like, well, if we're going to lose, let's, try to. Losing with Lamar Jackson, we're trying. Losing without Lamar Jackson, we're not trying, right? To some degree.
I agree. I mean, there was always questions, were they tanking last year? I think that was the result of some stupid moves, but I think Jim is just weird and eccentric enough to have believed that Sam Ellinger could pull off a couple of wins and even Nick Foles. But, I mean, for years around here, we've heard it's not all about the quarterback. It's not all about the quarterback. Guess what? It's all about the freaking quarterback. It just is. Football.
Bob Kravitz shooting it straight. So high level here. I mean, you were involved in the deflate gate and the lack of integrity and like reporting and all of this stuff with the league. Where are you on the Snyder thing? I mean, this is
Gotta go. He's got to go. I mean, Jim, it's weird. I think Jim so enjoyed the positive pub that he got from speaking out that I think it emboldened him in a way. And I think he went on this weird ego trip where he's the kingmaker. He's the guy making the moves. He's the puppeteer. And I think that was a mistake because it puts Chris Ballard, in an impossible position, because nobody knows who's making the decisions. I think it's back in Ballard's lap now, but Jim did not handle last year well at all.
Well, and him popping off to the owners too was something like that could be used against them in a legal battle. And Jim was, Jim did get positive press on that because it's speaking truth to truth, right? And
the power, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. That I think, and for whatever they're going to come out of with this weekend, Jim, once he's gone, Jim's going to say, "I told you."
Oh, absolutely. No, Snyder's got to go. I mean, he's a pox on the league. He's a cancer on the league, and he's got to go.
Well, how else are things in Indianapolis? Anything else going on out there, or is it just
Well,
the
let's
Colts
see.
right now?
In the space of 72 hours, number 1 rated Purdue basketball got beat. The next day, IU basketball, a big no-show against Miami, got beat. And then 24 hours later, the IU women's team, which is having a historic season, number 1 seed, and they got beat by the University of Miami on their home floor in Bloomington. So it's been a very depressing couple of sports weekends in a row, but a Lamar Jackson signing, I think, would change the general tenor of the city.
Well, that's why I reached to you, because I think there are very few seats left for Lamar now, right? Like we're getting to this point where like it's either going to happen here and they're going to figure it out, or it's not. And who will be this suitor? So, you've been a wealth of information as always, Kravitz. I appreciate you. And I'm sorry that they don't let me come to the combine anymore. So I don't get to come to Indianapolis once a year.
Well, not a problem. I'll have a beer for you.
I bet you will. Appreciate you. Bob Kravitz, you can find him out on the Twitter thing and find him anywhere great sports journalism is served. He's been serving it out in Indiana for a long, long time. And we'll keep our eye on the Lamarathon around here. Luke is in Owings Mills. And I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570 Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore positive.